Welcome to today's presentation, Federal Funding 101, Identifying and Braiding Federal Funding to Support School System Priorities. I am your presenter, Takara Chisley, with the Division of Federal Support. The 2020-2021 Super App timeline starts in November with the release of the Super App and school system planning resources. School systems should complete and submit the Super App by February 5th. In March, agency teams will provide feedback and school systems will submit revisions as needed. On April 20th, competitive allocations will be submitted to BESI for approval. As a reminder, all Super App and school system planning materials can be found in the School Improvement Library. To access the presentation recordings, you may click on the image on this slide. Our objectives for today are threefold. School systems will 1. Make connections between Super App priorities and federal funding sources. 2. Understand the purpose of federal funding and allowable expenditures. And 3. Apply the content shared in today's presentation to identify and braid funding sources to support school system priorities. Our agenda for today includes a high-level overview of the grants and Super App, a Super App funding scenario. Then we will take a closer look at federal programs to gain an understanding of the purpose of federal funds and allowable expenditures. Once you are grounded in federal programs, we will circle back to the Super App funding scenario and walk through how to identify and braid federal funding sources to support school system priorities. First up is Super App grants. School systems can access formula funds as well as request competitive funding by completing the Super App. Listed on the slide are the plans and budgets consolidated in this year's Super App and includes the CLSD 2019 for CIR and UIR academic schools, CLSD 2020 for schools labeled urgent intervention needed, ESSA funds, IDEA funds, Perkins, real-time early access to literacy, redesign funding, and the Title IV set-aside. Now that we know all of the available funding sources in the Super App, let's take a look at a Super App funding scenario that provides an example of how a school system identifies priorities. Before we look at the scenario, it is very important to note that the Super App facilitates school system planning efforts. To effectively plan, school systems will need to have key staff members at the table, such as curriculum and instruction staff, special education administrators, professional development teams, and your federal programs directors. This team will review data to identify priorities, develop a budget aligned to your school system priorities, and implement approved plans with support from the department. Now let's take a look at the scenario. Pelican School System, a rural district that has all Title I schools, is facing challenges in subgroup academic performance, a disproportionate percentage of out-of-school suspensions for students of color, and an increased percentage of non-certificated staff in CIR schools. Pelican School System performs a comprehensive needs assessment and based on the results, finds that teachers lack skills needed to differentiate instruction and provide evidence-based interventions. Needs assessment results also reveal that the suspension rates are higher for middle school males in classrooms led by female instructors. Lastly, the school system provides the same level of services and support for CIR schools as higher performing schools in the district. To address these issues, Pelican School System identifies 3 priorities: teacher professional development and support, which includes training and master teachers serving as coaches and interventionists, student well-being, implementing conscious discipline practices, culturally responsive classroom training, mental health supports, and CIR school support, employing recruitment and retention efforts, sign-on bonuses, and merit-based incentives to adequately staff CIR schools. After reading through part one of the scenario, as curriculum and instruction staff, begin to think about your priorities. As we move through the agenda, you will learn more about federal programs to get an idea of how you can effectively use funding to address your priorities. This brings us to the next agenda item, the Every Student Succeeds Act, commonly referred to as ESSA or ESSA. The Every Student Succeeds Act is a federal law that governs K-12 public education policy. This law replaced its predecessor, No Child Left Behind. To ensure all students are afforded an educational opportunity, ESSA holds all students to high academic standards, prepares all students for success in college and career, promotes local innovation and investment in evidence-based practices or what works, and provides funding to support the academic achievement of at-risk, disadvantaged students. This slide provides a list of all ESSA allocations in the Super App. This includes Title I Part A, Improving Basic Programs. As noted, most Title I schools in Louisiana implement a school-wide program. We will discuss this more on the next slide. Title I Part C, Migrant. Title I Part D, Neglected and or Delinquent for Adjudicated Youth. Title II Part A, Improving Teacher and Principal Quality. Title III Part A, to support English learners and newcomers. Title IV Part A, Student Support and Academic Enrichment Grants. Title V Part B, Rural Education. This program has the same allowability as Title I, and Title I 1003A, Direct Student Services. Now let's take a closer look at each program, starting with Title I. The purpose of Title I is one, to provide all children significant opportunity to receive a fair, equitable, and high-quality education, and two, close educational achievement gaps. Title I has two programs that schools may implement: school-wide and targeted assistance. Under school-wide, every student is eligible for Title I services. In contrast, a targeted assistance program may only support students that meet specific academic criteria. Under Title I, there are also two levels of support. At the school level, schools with 75% poverty or greater are required to be served, and funds support school level activities based on the school's Title I plan. At the district level, funding serves all Title I schools and may include district-wide instructional programs, support for CIR and UIR priorities, English learners, and PD activities. Title I does not have a specific use of funds provision. However, allowable costs are aligned with district and school needs and support the district or school's Title I plan. Some examples include costs associated with providing a high-quality curriculum, professional development, assessments, and interventions, AP, dual enrollment, IB assessment, and CLEP fees for disadvantaged students, middle and high school academic counseling, early childhood education, PBIS and other evidence-based discipline strategies, STEM, and supplemental redesigned activities for CIR and or UIR schools. Now let's take a look at Title I Part C that serves the migrant student population. The Louisiana Migrant Education Program supports high-quality comprehensive educational programs for migrant children and helps ensure that students are not penalized in any manner by disparities among states. School systems that receive migrant funds are required to comply with the state's migrant service delivery plan linked to this slide. Allowable costs include instructional services such as before and or after school tutoring, support services including access to health and service and social service providers, and family literacy. DSS is a Title I allotment to support school systems and students in gaining access to academic courses, credentials, and services that are not otherwise available at their schools. Allowable costs for DSS are based on priority of CIR and UIR schools and low achieving students. The chart on this slide provides examples of DSS experiences at the elementary and high school levels, but is not an exhaustive list. Examples of elementary experiences may include tutoring services, STEM, foreign language, and technology or software programs to advance reading comprehension or math acumen. Examples at the high school level may include tuition for dual enrollment, test fees for pre-ACT, PSAT, AP, IB, or CLEP. I know, lots of acronyms there. Test fees related to industry-based certifications, stipends for Jumpstart internship, advanced STEM academic courses, and credit recovery. Now let's transition to Title II, Part A. The purpose of Title II is to provide funding for school systems to increase student achievement consistent with Louisiana student standards, improve the quality and effectiveness of teachers, principals, and other school leaders, for example, assistant principals, and increase the number of effective teachers, principals, and other school leaders, and provide low income and minority students greater access to effective teachers, principals, and other school leaders. Examples of allowable cost based on workforce needs include high quality professional development, mentor stipends and training, performance based incentives, and recruitment and retention efforts. Title III is designed to improve the education of English learners by helping them learn English and meet Louisiana student standards. Allowable costs based on English learner needs include language instruction programs designed to help EL students access the curriculum and achieve, PD for all teachers on how to implement a curriculum that supports EL students, parent and family engagement activities, an EL coach, or translation services. There are several resources to address EL needs linked to this slide. Title IV, Part A is purposed to improve student academic achievement by providing all students with access to a well-rounded educational program, improve school conditions for student learning, and improve the use of technology. School systems with allocations greater than $30,000 are required to use funds for all three purposes. School systems are required to use 20% of Title IV funds to provide students with well-rounded educational opportunities, 20% for safe and healthy students, and use a portion of Title IV funds for the effective use of technology. Students with allocations less than $30,000 are only required to use funds to support one of three content areas. Allowable costs for well-rounded education may include AP, dual enrollment, IB assessment, and course-related fees for low-income students. High-quality courses in STEM, including computer science, music, and arts programming. Costs for safe and healthy students may include social and emotional learning, trauma support, mental health awareness, and the promotion of the involvement of parents. And costs for effective use of technology may include professional development to effectively implement virtual learning and technology infrastructure, devices, and internet connectivity. Our last ESSA program is Title V, Part B. The purpose of the Rural and Low Income Schools Grant is to address the unique needs of rural school systems that frequently lack the personnel and resources needed to compete for competitive grants and receive formula grants allocations in amounts too small to be effective in meeting their intended purposes. Allowable costs are based on school system needs and mirror Title I allowable costs as noted on this slide. Next on the agenda is the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. The Individuals with Disabilities Education Act is federal legislation that ensures students with a disability are provided a free, appropriate public education that is tailored to their individual needs. There are 6 principles of the IDEA that focuses on students' rights and public school responsibilities, and they include free, appropriate public education, or FAPE, appropriate evaluation, an IEP, least restrictive environment, parental participation, and procedural safeguards. There are 3 funding areas under IDEA. There is IDEA Part B 611 to support students with disabilities ages 3 to 21, IDEA Part B 619, which supports students with disabilities ages 3 to 5, and CEIS, which stands for Coordinated Early Intervening Services. This portion of IDEA funding provides flexibility to address significant disproportionality and services to children who need academic and/or behavioral supports. The purpose of IDEA is to ensure that all children with disabilities are provided FAPE, including special education and related services designed to meet their unique needs and prepare them for further education, employment, and independent living. Allowable costs based on student needs include instructional programs designed to help students with disabilities access the curriculum and achieve professional development for all teachers on how to implement curriculum that supports students with disabilities, assistive technology, related services and supports, transition to employment and secondary education, and 619 preschool services and supports. Now let's take a closer look at coordinated early intervening services. CEIS is a flexibility under IDEA that allows and may require school systems to set aside up to 15% of their IDEA Part B funds for academic and behavioral interventions. Under required CEIS, school systems are required to set aside 15% of IDEA funds for CEIS due to discipline, identification, and/or placement outcomes. School systems can use these funds for children ages 3 to grade 12. For voluntary CEIS, school systems can voluntarily set aside up to 15% of their IDEA funds. However, under voluntary CEIS, school systems are required to use funds for children in kindergarten through grade 12 who are general education students. Typically, these students are at risk of not meeting state standards. In general, CEIS can fund academic and behavioral interventions, evaluations, and supports. Detailed allowability guidance is available and linked to this slide. Now that we have a greater understanding of federal funds, let's circle back to the super app funding scenario. For part 2, we will focus on how to identify and braid federal funds to support school system priorities. As you remember, Pelican School System is a rural district with all Title I schools. The challenges are with subgroup academic performance, high percentages of out-of-school suspensions for students of color, and an increased percentage of non-certified staff in CIR schools. Comprehensive needs assessment results find teachers lack skills needed to differentiate instruction and provide evidence-based intervention. Suspension rates are higher for middle school males in classrooms led by female instructors, and the school system provides the same level of services and supports for CIR schools as higher performing schools in the district. Now that we have identified needs, let's take a look at an example of how to move along the continuum of school system planning process to identify priorities and coordinate federal funding to develop an aligned budget. Using data and results of the comprehensive needs assessment, Pelican School System identifies 3 priorities: teacher PD and support, student well-being, and CIR school support. To braid or coordinate funds and address priorities, the chart on this slide demonstrates how Pelican School System invests federal resources. The teacher PD and support priority is funded with titles 1, 2, 5, and CEIS. Activities under student well-being is funded with all funding sources listed on the slide. And the CIR school strategy is funded with titles 1, 2, and 5. Now keep in mind, to coordinate federal funds, school systems must adhere to fiscal requirements such as supplement, not supplant, ensuring the district's methodology to distribute local and state funds remains Title I neutral. And for all other ESSA programs, only provide additional services, staff, or materials that are not provided with state or local resources. The department is creating a federal funding guide to support school system efforts to better understand allowable expenses for federal funding sources and braiding or coordinating federal funds to support priorities. The federal funding guide will be released within the Super App launch timeline or shortly thereafter. You may click on the link in this slide to check the status of this guidance. Before we close, I am confident you have the information you need as curriculum and instructional staff to think about your priorities, strategize with your school system planning team, and innovate programs using all available funding sources. This slide contains Super App support information. All Super App launch presentations and recordings can be accessed in the School Improvement Library linked on this slide. Please note, during November, December, and January, regularly scheduled team monthly calls and office hours will provide opportunities for school system leaders to learn more about specific sections, ask questions, and receive feedback. New this year, the department will offer Super App planning support calls beginning in December, where teams can request one-on-one targeted guidance and support with planning, completing the workbook, and aligning funds to priorities. Please contact the Grants Help Desk with questions and include Super App in the subject line. This concludes today's presentation. Thank you for your participation.